In early June 2024, a routine assault case in Providence Municipal Court became a watershed moment in discussions about privilege, respect for working people, and the boundaries of political influence. What began as a violent incident in an upscale restaurant culminated in a courtroom confrontation that would end a legal career before it started, terminate a 16-year Senate tenure, and demonstrate that some lines, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed, regardless of family name or connections. This is the story of Brett Sullivan, the 26-year-old son of a state senator, who learned the hard way that assaulting a working mother and then threatening a judge is a combination that destroys futures. 3 weeks before the courtroom confrontation that would change multiple lives, Brett Sullivan walked into Riverside Bistro in downtown Providence with a group of friends. It was a Friday evening in mid-May, and the restaurant was busy with the dinner crowd. Professionals celebrating the end of the work week, couples on date nights, families marking special occasions. Maria Santos had been working the dinner shift. A 34-year-old single mother supporting her 8-year-old daughter, Maria held down 2 jobs to make ends meet. She had been a server for 12 years, developing the professional grace that comes from thousands of interactions with customers of every temperament. She took pride in her work, understanding that good service required patience, attentiveness, and dignity, even when customers didn't reciprocate. Brett and his friends arrived around 8:30 p.m., already showing signs of having been drinking before they entered. They were loud, entitled, and from the beginning, Brett treated Maria with casual contempt, snapping his fingers to get her attention, speaking to her dismissively, and making demands rather than requests. Maria maintained her professionalism. She took their orders, brought drinks and appetizers, and navigated their rudeness with the practiced patience of someone who understood that difficult customers were part of the job. The situation escalated when she delivered the entrees. One of Brett's friends had ordered a steak rare. It arrived medium. It was a simple kitchen mistake, easily corrected. Maria immediately apologized and offered to have it remade. But for Brett Sullivan, this was apparently an unforgivable offense. According to police reports and multiple witness statements, Brett became verbally aggressive. He called Maria incompetent and used several derogatory terms. He told her that people like her shouldn't be allowed to work at nice restaurants, a comment that revealed not just anger about a steak, but contempt for service workers as a class. Then Brett did something that crossed from verbal abuse into criminal assault. He picked up his drink and threw it directly in Maria's face. The liquid splashed across her face and soaked her uniform. Other diners gasped. Maria stood there, shocked and humiliated, drink dripping from her hair and face, while Brett's friends laughed. Maria, showing remarkable composure despite the assault, told Brett politely that she was going to get the manager and ask him to leave. That's when Brett stood up and pushed her, hard, with both hands against her chest. Maria fell backward into a table behind her, hitting it with enough force to leave bruises on her hip, shoulder, and arm. She collapsed to the floor as other diners rushed to help her. What Brett didn't know was that several customers had witnessed everything. Even more damaging to his future defense, 2 sisters celebrating a birthday had been taking photos and videos throughout their meal. And when Brett became aggressive, one of them started recording. They captured everything. The drink, thrown deliberately in Maria's face, her polite attempt to de-escalate, Brett's violent shove, and Maria's fall. They also captured Brett and his friends laughing as other customers helped Maria to her feet. When the manager arrived and called police, Brett tried to leave. But other customers, outraged by what they had witnessed, blocked the exit and insisted he wait for law enforcement. As police arrived and began taking statements, Brett made threats. According to multiple witnesses, he told Maria that his father would make sure she lost her job and that she would regret this. The implicit message was clear. He was a senator's son, and she was just a server. He was untouchable, Maria filed charges. Despite being afraid of retaliation, afraid that the system wouldn't protect someone like her against someone like him, she pressed forward with the assault complaint. 3 weeks later, they both walked into Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom. But only one of them understood the gravity of what was about to happen. It was 3:15 p.m. on a Friday afternoon when Brett Sullivan entered Providence Municipal Court. He moved with the confident bearing of someone who had spent 26 years watching problems disappear because of whose son he was. His expensive suit, designer watch, and casual demeanor radiated the superiority complex that develops when consequences have always been optional. Brett wasn't alone. He had hired an expensive attorney, clearly provided by his family's resources. But he also wasn't the only person from that restaurant night in the courtroom. Sitting in the gallery were 5 witnesses who had voluntarily come to ensure justice was served. Robert Chen, a software engineer; Margaret Foster, a retired teacher; Dr. James Morrison, a physician; and Lisa and Jennifer Patel, the sisters who had captured video evidence. And sitting quietly in her restaurant uniform, because she had to go directly to her second job after court, was Maria Santos. Brett Sullivan, the court clerk announced. Brett approached the defendant's stand with the bearing of someone who expected the charges to evaporate once officials recognized his name and connections. Judge Frank Caprio, with 38 years of experience on the bench, looked up from his paperwork. He recognized the name immediately and understood exactly what kind of case this would be. "Mr. Sullivan," Judge Caprio began, his voice carrying measured authority, "you're charged with simple assault, specifically on the evening of May 18th at approximately 9:30 p.m. at Riverside Bistro. You allegedly threw a beverage at your server, Maria Santos, and subsequently pushed her, causing her to fall." "How do you plead?" Brett's attorney stepped forward before Brett could speak. "Your Honor, my client pleads not guilty. This incident has been grossly mischaracterized. Mr. Sullivan was dining with friends, became frustrated with poor service, and there was a misunderstanding that resulted in accidental contact. No assault occurred." Judge Caprio set down his pen, a gesture that signaled he was about to cut through legal maneuvering. "Counselor, the police report indicates there were multiple witnesses to this incident. It also indicates that Miss Santos sustained bruises from her fall. That doesn't sound like accidental contact." The attorney, clearly experienced in protecting political family members, continued smoothly. "Your Honor, my client comes from a respected family. His father is Senator Thomas Sullivan. Brett himself is a Yale graduate who has been accepted to Columbia Law School starting this fall. This incident was completely out of character, and we believe a misunderstanding has been blown out of proportion." The mention of Columbia Law School and Senator Sullivan was clearly intended to signal that Brett deserved special consideration. But Judge Caprio's expression showed he wasn't impressed by credentials or connections when assault charges were involved. "Mr. Sullivan," Judge Caprio addressed Brett directly, ignoring the attorney's attempt to control the narrative. "I want to hear from you. What happened that night at the restaurant?" Brett's response, clearly rehearsed, carried the practiced tone of someone coached on what to say. "Your Honor, I was having dinner with friends. The service was extremely slow. Our server, Miss Santos, was inattentive and made several mistakes with our order. I became frustrated, and yes, I may have raised my voice, but I certainly didn't assault anyone. Any physical contact was completely accidental." Judge Caprio consulted the police report again. "Mr. Sullivan, according to this report, you called Miss Santos multiple derogatory names, threw your drink directly in her face, and when she asked you to leave, you pushed her with enough force to knock her into a table, causing her to fall and sustain injuries. That doesn't sound accidental." Brett's confident demeanor showed its first crack of irritation. "Your Honor, with all due respect, the police report is based on biased witness statements. Miss Santos clearly has an incentive to exaggerate this incident. I'm sure she sees this as an opportunity to get money. From my family. The courtroom stirred with shocked whispers. Brett had just suggested his victim was lying for financial gain. What he didn't know was that his victim and 5 witnesses were about to systematically destroy every claim he had just made. Judge Caprio's expression became more serious. Mr. Sullivan, that's a serious accusation to make about your alleged victim. Let me ask you directly. Are you claiming you did not throw a drink at Miss Santos? Correct, Your Honor, Brett said confidently. My drink spilled during an animated conversation. It was an accident. And the allegation that you pushed Miss Santos, causing her to fall? Also untrue. I may have gestured and accidentally made contact, but I certainly didn't push her with any force. She must have lost her balance. Judge Caprio nodded slowly. Mr. Sullivan, are you aware that this restaurant has security cameras? Brett's confident expression faltered for just a moment. And are you aware that there were multiple customers dining at the restaurant who witnessed this incident and who have provided statements to police? Judge Caprio looked toward the gallery. Is Maria Santos present in court? Maria stood slowly, visibly nervous but determined. Yes, Your Honor. I'm Maria Santos. Miss Santos, please approach the witness stand. After being sworn in, Maria told her story in her own words. Her voice was soft but clear, carrying the slight accent of someone for whom English is a second language. She described the evening professionally, without embellishment or dramatization. She explained Brett's escalating rudeness, the drink thrown in her face, her polite attempt to de-escalate by getting the manager, and then the violent push that sent her crashing into a table. Miss Santos, Judge Caprio asked gently, did you do anything to provoke Mr. Sullivan's actions? No, Your Honor. I was doing my job. I was polite even when he was rude. I have been a server for 12 years. I know how to handle difficult customers, but I have never had anyone throw a drink at me and push me like that. Maria showed the court her bruises, still visible weeks later. She described not just the physical injuries, but the emotional toll, the humiliation, the nightmares, the fear of returning to work, the difficulty explaining to her 8-year-old daughter why she was sad. Your Honor, Maria said, her voice breaking slightly. I'm a single mother. I work 2 jobs to support us. After this happened, I was afraid to go back to work. I was afraid other customers would treat me that way. But the worst part wasn't the physical injuries. It was being treated like I was nothing, like I didn't deserve basic respect because I'm a server. The courtroom was absolutely silent as Maria testified with quiet dignity about pain that went far beyond bruises. Then Judge Caprio called the witnesses. One by one, they came forward and corroborated Maria's account with devastating precision. Robert Chen, the software engineer, testified clearly. I clearly saw him pick up his glass and deliberately throw the contents in her face. It was not an accident. When she said she was getting the manager, he stood up and pushed her with both hands on her chest. She fell backward into the table behind her. It was violent and deliberate. Margaret Foster, the retired teacher, provided emotional testimony. He called that poor woman terrible names. He said people like her shouldn't be allowed to work at decent restaurants. When he threw the drink at her, everyone around us gasped. Then, when she very politely said she would get the manager, he just pushed her. She fell so hard, Mr. Sullivan and his friends laughed. They actually laughed. Dr. James Morrison added medical perspective. I'm a physician. After Miss Santos fell, I went to check if she was injured. She had visible bruising already forming. She was shaking, clearly in shock. Mr. Sullivan showed no concern whatsoever. When I told him he should apologize, he said something crude and tried to leave. Then came the testimony that would seal Brett's fate completely. Jennifer Patel stood and said the words that changed everything. "We have video of him throwing the drink and pushing Miss Santos." "You have video evidence?" Judge Caprio asked, eyebrows raised. "Yes, Your Honor. We gave it to the police, but we also have it on our phones." The video was played on the courtroom monitors. The footage was clear and undeniable. Brett Sullivan deliberately throwing liquid in Maria's face. Maria recoiling, liquid dripping down her uniform. Her polite attempt to walk away. Brett standing up, saying something aggressive, and pushing Maria hard with both hands. Her fall backward into the table. Brett's friends laughing, other diners rushing to help. Every claim Brett had made was proven false. The drink wasn't accidental. The push wasn't a light gesture. Everything Maria had testified to was true. The courtroom was silent as the video ended. Every eye turned to Brett Sullivan, whose earlier confidence had completely evaporated. Brett's attorney whispered urgently to him, clearly panicked by the video evidence. But Brett, emboldened by a lifetime of family connections fixing his problems, made a catastrophic decision. "Your Honor," Brett said, his voice taking on an edge of desperation mixed with entitlement. "I think you need to consider the full context here. Yes, I made a mistake. I had too much to drink. But I'm a Yale graduate. I've been accepted to Columbia Law School. I have my whole future ahead of me. A conviction for assault will destroy my legal career before it starts." Judge Caprio's expression remained neutral. "Mr. Sullivan, the time to think about your legal career was before you assaulted Miss Santos, not after you got caught." Brett's face showed frustration at not being immediately accommodated. "Your Honor, my father is Senator Thomas Sullivan. He has significant influence in this state, I'm sure. You're aware that he sits on committees that oversee judicial funding and appointments." Judge Caprio set down his pen. That gesture that signals something monumental is about to happen. "Mr. Sullivan, did you just threaten this court by referencing your father's political position?" Brett, realizing he may have crossed a line but unable to stop himself, doubled down. "I'm not threatening anyone, Your Honor. I'm just stating facts. My father knows a lot of judges. He has a lot of friends in the legal community. I think it would be in everyone's best interest to resolve this matter quietly. Maybe some community service and counseling. I'm sure Miss Santos would be willing to accept a financial settlement." The courtroom erupted in shocked whispers. Brett had just threatened a judge while suggesting he could buy his way out of assaulting a working mother. What Judge Caprio did next would become legendary in Rhode Island legal circles. A masterclass in judicial authority meeting entitled Privilege. Judge Caprio stood up from his bench, his voice cutting through the courtroom with absolute authority. "Mr. Sullivan, let me make something very clear. Your father's political position means nothing in this courtroom. Your Yale degree means nothing. Your Columbia Law School acceptance means nothing. What matters is that you violently assaulted a woman who was doing her job. And now you're attempting to use your family connections to avoid consequences." The judge walked to the front of his bench, eliminating the formal distance, making this personal. "Let me tell you about Maria Santos, Mr. Sullivan. She works 2 jobs to support her daughter. She's been a server for 12 years, maintaining her dignity and professionalism even when customers are rude. She came to this country to build a better life, and she does honest work to provide for her family. She represents everything that's good about hardworking people in this country." Judge Caprio's voice grew stronger, more passionate. "You, on the other hand, represent everything that's wrong with entitled privilege. You think your education, your family name, and your father's position make you superior to people who serve you. You think assaulting a working mother is acceptable if you're wealthy and connected, and you think threatening judges will make your problems disappear." The courtroom was absolutely silent, Everyone present understood they were witnessing something extraordinary. Judge Caprio returned to his bench and delivered his ruling. Mr. Sullivan, I find you guilty of assault. The video evidence is clear. The witness testimony is unanimous. You deliberately threw a drink at Miss Santos, and you deliberately pushed her, causing injury. This was not an accident. This was not a misunderstanding. This was assault motivated by class contempt and enabled by entitled privilege. Brett's face went pale as the reality of a criminal conviction began to sink in. Furthermore, Mr. Sullivan, because you attempted to threaten this court by referencing your father's political position, I'm imposing the maximum penalties allowed under law. Judge Caprio's voice took on the weight of absolute judicial authority. You are sentenced to 6 months in county jail. However, I'm suspending 5 months of that sentence on the following conditions. You will serve 30 days immediately. You will complete 200 hours of community service, specifically working in restaurant kitchens and service positions, so you learn to respect the work Miss Santos does. You will pay Miss Santos $5,000 in restitution for her injuries, lost wages, and emotional distress. 30 days in jail, Your Honor? I can't. Brett started to protest. You can, and you will, Mr. Sullivan. Furthermore, you will attend mandatory anger management and substance abuse counseling. You will write a formal public apology to Miss Santos that will be published in the Providence Journal. And you will be on probation for 2 years, during which any violation of law will result in you serving the remaining 5 months. The courtroom erupted in applause. Maria Santos began crying with relief. But Judge Caprio had one more devastating point to make. Mr. Sullivan, you mentioned your acceptance to Columbia Law School. I am directing court administration to forward a complete transcript of these proceedings, including the video evidence and your attempt to threaten this court, to the Columbia University School of Law admissions office. Brett's face showed horror. Your Honor, no, please. Judge Caprio's voice was firm and final. Mr. Sullivan, to practice law, you must demonstrate good moral character. You assaulted a working mother, lied about it under oath, and attempted to use your father's political position to threaten a judge. Those actions demonstrate you lack the character necessary to practice law. Whether Columbia Law School chooses to rescind your admission is their decision, but they deserve to know who they admitted. The judge looked out at the courtroom, knowing this moment would be recorded and shared widely. Let this be a lesson to everyone. Your family connections don't excuse assault. Your education doesn't make you superior to people who work service jobs. And threatening judges doesn't make your problems disappear. It makes them infinitely worse. Court is adjourned. As the courtroom emptied, Brett sat alone at the defendant's table, his expensive attorney quietly explaining that he would need to report to county jail within 48 hours to begin serving his 30-day sentence. The privileged life that had protected him from consequences for 26 years had just collapsed completely. Maria Santos, surrounded by the witnesses who had supported her, wiped tears from her eyes. For the first time since the assault, she felt validated and protected by a system she had feared wouldn't care about someone like her. What happened in the following days and weeks proved that Brett's case had touched something profound about class, privilege, and the importance of treating all workers with dignity. The video of Brett's court appearance went viral, accumulating over 6 million views in 72 hours. But more important than the view count was the conversation it sparked about how wealthy, connected people treat service workers and what happens when privilege meets accountability. Within 24 hours, Columbia Law School released a statement announcing they were reviewing Brett's admission in light of the assault conviction and his courtroom conduct. Within 1 week, they officially rescinded his acceptance, citing concerns about moral character and fitness to practice law. Senator Thomas Sullivan attempted to defend his son in a press conference, but it became a political disaster when reporters asked if he believed assault was acceptable as long as the victim was a server. His stammering non-answer went viral for all the wrong reasons. 3 months later, Senator Sullivan announced he would not seek re-election. His political career effectively ended by his son's entitled violence and his own failure to teach his son that all people deserve respect, regardless of their profession. Brett served his 30 days in county jail. He completed his community service working in restaurant kitchens, where he learned firsthand how physically demanding and underappreciated service work is. He wrote his public apology, which was published in the Providence Journal, though many readers noted its tone-deaf quality, suggested he was apologizing for getting caught rather than for his actions. Maria Santos received her $5,000 in restitution. She used it to take her daughter on their first real vacation, a week at a modest beach house where, for the first time in years, she could rest without worrying about money. The witnesses who came forward were celebrated in Rhode Island as examples of citizens who stood up when they saw injustice. The Patel sisters' video became a case study in why bystanders should document incidents when they see wrongdoing. 6 months after his conviction, Brett attempted to apply to other law schools. Every application was rejected. His assault conviction and the viral video of his courtroom behavior made him unemployable in the legal field. Today, Brett works in sales for a company owned by a family friend. He makes a fraction of what he expected to earn as a lawyer. He lives with the permanent consequences of 30 seconds of entitled violence and 5 minutes of courtroom arrogance. Maria Santos continues working at Riverside Bistro, where management gave her a raise and made her lead server. She speaks regularly at worker rights events about the importance of standing up to abuse from customers and employers. Her story has empowered other service workers to report harassment and assault, knowing that the system can work when people have the courage to seek justice. Judge Frank Caprio's handling of the case became a teaching moment in law schools across the country, an example of how judges can uphold equal justice regardless of a defendant's privilege or connections. The case taught several enduring lessons. No amount of privilege excuses violence. Education, family connections, and political influence don't create immunity from consequences when you hurt other people. Service workers deserve respect and protection. People who serve us, in restaurants, retail, hospitality, deserve to do their jobs without fear of harassment or assault. Their work has dignity, and they have rights. Bystanders matter. The witnesses who came forward and the sisters who recorded video evidence proved that speaking up when you see wrongdoing can make the difference between justice and impunity. Threatening judges backfires spectacularly. Brett's attempt to leverage his father's political position transformed his situation from bad to catastrophic, ensuring maximum penalties and national attention. Character matters more than credentials. Brett's Yale degree and Columbia Law School acceptance couldn't compensate for his fundamental lack of character, the inability to treat other human beings with basic respect. The story of Brett Sullivan and Maria Santos reminds us that in courtrooms where justice is taken seriously, privilege doesn't determine outcomes. Evidence does, character does, and respect for human dignity does. Maria Santos's courage in pressing charges, the witnesses' willingness to come forward, and Judge Caprio's refusal to be intimidated by political threats combined to create a moment of genuine accountability in a world where such moments are too rare. Brett Sullivan learned that 30 seconds of entitled violence can destroy a lifetime of carefully cultivated privilege. Maria Santos learned that standing up for yourself, even when you're afraid, even when your attacker has power and connections, can result in justice. And millions of people who watch the video learned that in some courtrooms at least, all people are truly equal before the law, regardless of whether they're serving tables or sitting in the Senate.